Black Americans are about 13 to 14% of the population.
Yes,
about half of all prisoners are black.
Exactly.
So blacks commit more crimes than whites do. They commit more murders, they commit more arsons, they commit more kidnappings. For example, blacks are 13% of the population and they commit 58% of all the murders. How do black people not have access to a better life in America? What's preventing them?
What's preventing black people from having a better life in America?
Yes. What's preventing them?
Police, the government.
Hold on, no. Police. How many unarmed black men die? How many unarmed black men die from the hands of police every year?
The unarmed black men? Are you serious?
How many? Black people are only 13% of the population, yet they commit 55% of the murders. Why?
Because black people tend to be in lower economic statuses.
So you think that poverty equals crime?
It's highly correlated. A lot of studies
this is where
on
we
that.
disagree. What an insult to the working poor of this country.
So why do you think black people commit more crime,
Well, first
Charlie
of all,
Kirk?
what percentage of blacks have a father around when they're raised?
I'm not sure.
25%. 75% of black youth are raised without a father in the home. 75%. It is the most predictable way to end up in prison, end up as a murderer or a criminal.
And why
It's
do
not a
you think that's
racism
a problem?
It's not a white supremacy problem. It's a fact that black fathers impregnate women and they don't stay around with the women that they have impregnated. If a white person were to come up and say, you know, black America really needs to get its act together and stop sleeping around all the time and it needs to actually have monopoly.
Why would you?
Because it's true. Let's look at the evidence. You said to myself, you said there's all these people suffering in Chicago. There's all these people that are terrible. I'm telling you why. It's because there's been bad decisions that have been institutionalized, and rap artists and athletes and people at the top level of black society that refuse to ever challenge the core rot in black America, which is that they are allowing degeneracy and hedonism to eat the soul of what once was a beautiful black culture, and instead they go around saying it's the boogeyman of racism, the white man is out to get you, and the result is black America is doing worse than it was in the 1960s.
I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year, so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights.
I'm sorry, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
Well, that's the
you wouldn't have done that. You wouldn't have done that before.
That's not an immediate.
No, you wouldn't have done that before.
That's not who I am. That's not what I believe.
It is the. Oh, really? Then who are you? What do you believe, Charlie Kirk? Because you know what I think when I see a white guy of medium to low intelligence with a huge audience because he spews racist and other bigoted ideas? I think they've been handed everything they've ever had. Do you know how difficult it probably was for that black pilot to get where they are? Don't project your shit onto them. Just because your path to fame and fortune was paved with gold doesn't mean that's how it's been for everybody else.
Man, I'm glad a black man ain't do that to Charlie Kirk, because that would have triggered a whole race war.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Profess. Thanks again for tuning in. I really appreciate your support, your sweet comments and supportive comments on this platform. Thank you so much for your super chats, and special thanks to those of you who are subscribed to this channel. If you're not, kindly consider subscribing. Alright, did you see how fast people actually dragged Charlie Kirk after he was unalived? Some people are actually cheering, others are mocking, others are saying this is what you get, especially because a lot of people did not like him. They did not like his rhetoric or his opinion. And if you ever actually felt, like people only want what's worst for you to go public, this one is for you, because we are seeing something unusual. Black folks are reacting to the unaliving of this man and saying that he hated us first. And if you grew up in a place where your word matters, where respect isn't free, where folks actually remember what, people called you as a name, not just for what you did, but for who you were. Now, when a public figure spends years saying things that feel like punches to black folks and people, the LGBTQ folks, immigrants, and anyone who's not in their own tribe, those words don't just evaporate just because the mic was turned off. All right, let's be clear though. I'm not saying that anyone who supports, Trump or admires Kirk is evil, and I'm not saying that black folks should actually feel a certain way, but we do live in a moment where rhetoric has consequences, where words collide with real lives. And when someone actually with some airtime, more most people actually have, uses words that are hurtful to people, there are some people who are going to be permanently wounded, and some of them never forget. And this is exactly why in this video we want to dig into what black folks are saying, about this, how social media is reacting to this, the mixed grief of these people, and how it's going. If you're new, kindly consider subscribing. I'm your presenter, Profess. Let's take a look at these videos that I've sampled for you guys. I'll be back with more commentary after this.
Okay. So if you had a daughter and she was 10 and she got and she was going to give birth and she would and she was going to give birth and she was going to live, would you want her to go through that and carry her baby?
That's awfully graphic.
It's but it's a real life scenario that happens to many people.
The answer is yes, the baby would be delivered.
Oh, okay, great. So that's insane.
But let me tell you why. No, hold on. Let me ask you a question. There's 2 ultrasounds I have. One is a baby conceived in, one is a baby conceived by a loving couple. Which one is which?
Your daughter was probably hopefully conceived by a somewhat loving couple.
Conceived by? Tell me which one was conceived by.
You don't know.
Exactly, because it's all human rights and it's all human beings.
But that doesn't matter. It's about your daughter who has to give birth to it and is going to be tortured by that for the rest of her life. That's going to take away every freedom she's ever going to have. That's going to ruin her life.
Charlie Kirk did not lose his life because of a difference of opinion. He lost his life because of a gun. His death certificate is not going to say difference of opinion. And y'all can stop trying to gaslight people by saying if you're anti-gun violence, then you should be anti-gun violence all the time. We are. We never said that we were okay with gun violence. What we said was he died for what he was advocating for. And if he had advocated for stricter gun laws, he might still be here right now. Now, is there a high likelihood that the person behind the gun had a difference of opinion than him? Sure, but I'm going to keep reminding y'all that he said that was a risk he was willing to take.
You will never live in a society when you have an armed citizenry and you won't have a single gun death. That is nonsense. It's drivel. But I think it's worth it.
Or did he mean that he only thought it was worth it if it didn't impact him and his family? Because many of us know people who don't have parents because of gunshots. Shit hit different when it's close to home, don't it? And y'all want people to feel empathy for him, but he didn't feel any empathy for the families who lost their children due to mass shootings at schools. He thought that they were a casualty of war and that it was worth it. And no, I don't feel bad for his wife, because you married someone who thought it was okay for people to die so that everyone else could have guns. You married him. Listen, y'all ain't fooling nobody by trying to change the narrative.
You said if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. Are you going to do that?
Yeah, I mean that is correct, yeah.
That's correct? Okay, so can we both agree?
What was the context of what I said, though?
What was the context? I don't even want to get into DEI because your opinion on DEI, it doesn't really help it in this case. So if the context between what you brought up was that you believe that
because they were being hired because they were black.
Okay, so can we both agree that every single pilot, whether black, white, whoever, has to go through FAA certification?
No, actually,
we can't.
New lawsuit shows that black pilots and female pilots have the standards being relaxed.
No, sir. Can we agree at the time of February 29th or 2023 when you said it at the time? No?
No. Actually, I said it. That's why you don't know the context. Is that new lawsuits were showing that they were relaxing the standards for air traffic control and pilots in order to meet the standards.
The context of that was diversity, equity, and inclusion. What does that have to do with hiring?
Everything. DEI definitionally is that we will hire more of a race versus a different race. So, for example, United Airlines said that they want 50% of their new pilots to either be women or black.
Okay.
Currently, just so you understand, it's like 8%. So they want to go from 8% to 50%.
Okay.
And every time DEI is implemented, every single time, the lowering of standards occurs. Every single time.
Lowering of standards?
Correct. So can I prove it to you? We both want excellence, right?
Okay.
If you and I said, hey, we want 50% of the new people going in the NBA are white.
Okay.
Would the NBA drop in its standard?
No. The National Basketball League?
No, if we said 50%, if we say
if 50% of the NBA dropped and it was only white.
No,
you're saying would the standard go down?
I'm not hearing what I'm saying. If 50% of all new people going in the NBA were white, by decree, would the quality of play of the NBA decrease?
Would the quality of play in the NBA decrease?
Yeah.
No, if they're the same standard of basketball player.
Hold on, let's talk realistic.
Well, what are you saying realistically? You're asking me if
75% of the NBA is black. 75%.
Remember when Charlie Kirk said that black women didn't have the same brain processing power? Remember when Charlie Kirk said that children dying in mass shootings was deemed worth it? Remember when Charlie Kirk said that if his daughter were and had to carry that baby at 10 years old, that he would force his daughter to have that child? Well, I do. Charlie Kirk was a raging racist, hatred, used every single ounce of time of his life on this planet to spew hatred towards marginalized groups. And for the fact that people are like, he was a father, he was this, he was that. Although that is true, so are horrifically bad people in history. I'm sure Robert E. Lee, etc., or other people in history were fathers and had families. That doesn't take away the fact that this person was a bad person. And in the words of Charlie Kirk, he simply didn't believe empathy was real. So why should people sit up here and feel bad? No one condones violence. Violence is never the answer, but at the same time, you can't force some people to mourn something when they were actively being hated on by this group.
I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think empathy is a made-up New Age term that does a lot of damage, but
I'm supposed to have empathy for a motherfucker that doesn't believe in it. I'm supposed to have empathy for a person that demonized my people, a person who watched a black man get his neck kneeled down for 9 minutes. He had a daughter, but do you know what that man said about that man after he was deceased? And I'm supposed to have some empathy? You're telling me that my morals are compromised because I don't have empathy for a man who doesn't view me as an equal human being to him, a man that does not have sympathy for children being mowed down in schools, a man that does not have any sympathy for the women that are losing their reproductive health care and are set to lose more of their reproductive health care. This man literally said that he would force his daughter to have her rapist child, and I'm supposed to have some empathy that this man got taken out while spewing some more hateful rhetoric. Seriously? You can be against gun violence, right? You can acknowledge that no human being deserves to have their life taken away. Nobody does. But at the same time, stop telling people who are affected by the rhetoric that these people spew and individuals, because now that a lot of people who are saying that you should have some empathy, now there's finally somebody that looks like them that has been a victim of this. I've been having to watch my people get killed on camera as long as I can remember. Stop telling us to have empathy for a person that does not have empathy for us. That's not how that works. That's not how that works.
Charlie Kirk's death has led me to an uncomfortable conversation that I want to facilitate. To my white brothers and sisters, how would you hope your minority friends respond to the celebration of Charlie Kirk's life when he has very publicly said things like this?
I live like a capitalist every single day, Shank. I live as a capitalist. Because of DEI, it begs the question, when you see a black pilot, you wonder, you say, I hope they are qualified. If I'm dealing with somebody in customer service who's a moronic black woman, I wonder, is she there because of her excellence? And Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously.
Refer to Asian individuals by the C word, a word too violent for me to even utter. Refer to Michelle Obama and Ketanji Brown Jackson of the Supreme Court, both Harvard graduates, as not having the brain processing power to be taken seriously. Suggested that if seeing a black pilot, would assume they were a DEI hire. To my white brothers and sisters, I'm genuinely asking, how would you like your minority friends to respond to the celebration of his life? Not to his death, but to the celebration of his life.
Nah, don't forget now. Charlie went and told y'all, this is an unfortunate sacrifice. Charlie Kirk went and told you that it was an unfortunate sacrifice that would need to be made to protect the Second Amendment. Things like this would have to happen. A citizen getting popped in broad daylight would have to happen. As unfortunate as it is, it was an unfortunate sacrifice that must be made to uphold the Second Amendment. Charlie Kirk fought for that. He worked hard for this. He worked real hard. He advocated for a fascistic regime, preached nonsensical race junk science that has been debunked for over 100 years. He hated the LGBTQIA community. An active TERF who didn't want women to have body autonomy and reproductive rights. He was a known Islamophobe, a white Christian nationalist, a man who he himself went on record on his little TV show and said he hated empathy. He thought it caused a lot of problems. Mr. Kirk worked real hard for this, and he knocked on hate's door all of his professional life. And the funny thing is, if you knock on hate's door long enough, hate will finally answer. And it answered him.
Black Americans are about 13 to 14% of the population.
Yes,
about half of all prisoners are black.
Exactly.
So blacks commit more crimes than whites do. They commit more murders, they commit more arsons, they commit more kidnappings. For example, blacks are 13% of the population and they commit 58% of all the murders.
Okay, let's talk about it. These are obviously racist claims, but I will respond to them as if Charlie Kirk were a reasonable person.
Black Americans are about 13 to 14% of the population.
Yes,
about half of all prisoners are black.
Wrong. Just 38% of America's prison population is black. That's according to the U.S. government. But it makes you wonder why Charlie feels the need to add an additional 12% to the black prison population. Could it be because his bigoted talking points only work if he exaggerates them? If Charlie were actually looking for the race that makes up half the prison population in the U.S., he'd look no further than white people at 57%.
Exactly.
So blacks commit more crimes than whites do.
Wrong. The word "so" is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence.
Exactly.
So blacks commit more crimes.
He's saying "so" as in therefore, as in one could conclude, but Charlie knows he's lying. Even if he hadn't just lied about the black prison population, Charlie is smart enough to know that correlation does not equal causation, but he's hoping that you don't know that. So he deploys the word "so" to make you think he's coming to an obvious conclusion.
Exactly.
So blacks
Instead, he's making an illogical racist leap. Charlie knows that we don't have usable data about who commits crimes. It's impossible to have that data since so many crimes go both unreported and or unsolved. Charlie knows that we only have data about arrests and convictions. I'll come back to that data in a moment. What's painfully obvious is that Charlie Kirk isn't interested in understanding the statistics he so carelessly misquotes. He's interested in making bad faith arguments. Something that becomes even more obvious in his next point.
blacks are 13% of the population and they commit 58% of all the murders.
Wrong again, and loud this time. If Charlie were interested in honesty, he would have mentioned the other 1350 statistic. Yes, black people are about 13% of the population, but make up 53% of all criminal exonerations. In fact, black people make up 55% of all murder exonerations specifically. Black people are more likely than any other group in this country to be convicted of crimes they did not commit. And then people like you have the nerve to parade these stats around as though they prove something. The reality is that you probably know these stats, but you leave them out on purpose because to bring that stat into this conversation would make some people think. And that's the last thing a person like you wants.
You shouldn't celebrate someone dying because it's still a life loss. Is it though? Is Charlie Kirk a life loss, or did the devil just call home one of his disciples? I mean, they celebrated when they killed Martin Luther King and he was preaching peace. I think it's okay for people to be rejoicing in a white supremacist dying. I think that's all right. Mind you, he died doing what he loved, protecting gun rights. He said so famously that he believes that deaths are just sacrifices made to keep your Second Amendment, and he is indeed one of those sacrifices. And I'm gonna be honest, better him than another innocent child just going to school, or an innocent person going to the grocery store, or an innocent person going to church, or an innocent person just being on the subway, or an innocent person literally anywhere dying from gun violence. That man spent the last few years of his life peddling racism, white supremacy, xenophobia, sexism, and all things detrimental to a productive society. He was the embodiment of bigotry, and him dying in this way was very poetic. And I don't feel bad.
Alright guys, there you have it. Actually, as we have seen in the video, a lot of people of color and black and brown community, LGBTQ community did not appreciate what Kirk actually stood for. They did not appreciate his rhetoric. They did not appreciate his opinion because it was hurtful to some people. Again, we have to say that everybody, has a right to their own opinion, but of course, in society, we have to actually be careful how we use our words, especially because some people actually never forget. And I want to talk about why some black folks actually are showing no sympathy to the unaliving of this man. Charlie Kirk was actually known for framing systemic racism as a myth and dismissing Black Lives Matter and pushing the idea that racial inequality is exaggerated. For many Black Americans, that actually hits a nerve because, it feels like someone saying your struggle isn't real, because this is exactly what Black folks actually have had to deal with since the beginning of time, since when the Caucasian man actually stepped foot in the Americas. And you cannot actually dismiss someone's pain because of this. You have to actually consider other people and what they have had to deal with. I saw a video where this man was trying to argue that just because these atrocities were done by the ancestors of the Caucasian man to the ancestors of the Black folks, they should not be held accountable, and Black folks should not be looking for reparation. What do you mean? Because that mental trauma is actually still, eating in Black folks' mind. It still affects their lives till date. And if everybody else who was abused in history has been given reparation, why can't Black Americans actually be given reparations? Because we all know the country in the Middle East that we don't name, and we all know what happened to them, and they were given reparations. Why can't Black folks actually get reparations? That means that it is in someone's or the system's best interest to make sure that Black communities are never empowered to the point where they are self-reliant. Now, you have to talk about cumulative pain, because decades of anti-Black stereotype, voter suppression debates and policing disparities mean that Black communities already live with a sense of not being heard. That is true. And that is 100% real life of many people. They do not have a voice in their own country. And when a public figure amplifies this and dismisses this pain, anger is actually bound to build up. And this is why a lot of Black folks are showing no sympathy because of his rhetoric, not because necessarily this man was physically harmful, but he was pushing an agenda that dismissed Black folks, legal claim to reparation and systemic change and equality that they are not getting up to date. And we have to admit that this is a new, because Black Americans also responded coldly when, segregationists or open racists in the Jim Crow South were unalived. And it wasn't about celebrating their unaliving. It was about remembering the harm that went unaccounted for. That's exactly what they're trying to do here. They're not actually trying to celebrate the unaliving of CK. They are trying to show and remember the mental harm and the harmful agenda that was being pushed by this man. And it went on and on without being accounted for. Now, that is not celebration. That is just brutal honesty. And I get why some people may not be happy at how people of color are responding to this, especially people on the left, responding to this news of CK actually being unalived. There is nobody, anybody who is a human being who's gonna celebrate someone being harmed or being unalived. But what they don't actually show is sympathy, because they're trying to say maybe your rhetoric actually caused this demise, because this man actually went ahead and argued that pew-pew violence was actually a necessary sacrifice for them to protect, the Second Amendment. And ironically, he fell to the demise of pew-pew violence. Well, you can call it instant karma. You can call it, as they're trying to address it, he caused this himself. You can call it whatever you want, but let me know in the comments what do you think about today's episode. I'm a presenter Profess. If you're new, kindly consider subscribing, hit that like button. See you on the next episode.